United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. A reminder to turn off your cell phones, please. And I'll call this meeting of March 12th to order for the purpose of interviewing two experienced professional candidates for town manager. And we'll start off, I'll ask Mr. Lynch to do a quick synopsis of the process. Please, Bernie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, am I on? Okay. Let me just, I gave this presentation to some extent last week to the board and to the public that was watching, but if I could just sort of explain of how we got to where we are tonight. Back in October, I believe it was, the town sought proposals from various consulting firms to conduct a town manager search for the town of Danvers. Community Paradigm submitted a proposal. We've been doing town manager searches now for approximately 8 or 9 years now. We've conducted approximately 120 searches across the Commonwealth during that period of time. In short, we are the most active recruitment firm within the Commonwealth. When we were engaged by the town, as a result of our proposal, on November 19th, we immediately began to develop a listing and a description of the priorities of the town of Danvers and the attributes that the town was seeking from the next town manager based upon discussions with members of this board, department heads, through research that we conducted regarding the town, utilizing documents from the town itself, as well as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Division of Local Services, in order to develop the position profile that we utilize to recruit candidates for the position. We began our more active recruitment. We certainly were talking to people prior to this, having been engaged by the town, but we began our truly active recruitment right after the holidays in December, and posted the position in a number of professional publications, utilized the various graduate programs of public administration here in the Commonwealth that have alumni that are serving in local government. We distributed the position to our own database of potential candidates, which is some 400 strong, based upon people that we've been working with over the years and other people that we know are interested in these types of positions. And we also conducted more candidate-specific outreach to town managers, assistant town managers in the region, and those outside the region that we thought might be interested in relocating to Danvers itself or the Danvers area, depending upon what might happen with the town's charter moving forward. Our deadline for applications was January 29th. Danvers did well in terms of its total number of applicants. We received 31 applicants for the position, which is a good number in the current environment in which there's been such a dramatic turnover of managers in the Commonwealth over the last 7 or so years. Of those 31 applicants, 9 of them were current town managers or town administrators. We worked closely with the screening committee that was established by this board. Ms. Bernard served as the chair of that screening committee, and Ms. Bennett was served as well. We also had members of the public that served on that committee. And we sat down and looked through those 31 applicants, identified 7 that were suitable for interview, and that the committee was interested in talking to. We covered a number of different topics over the course of 2 days of interviews with those candidates. And then based upon all of that, the screening committee chose 3 finalists for presentation to the select board. We currently only have 2. One of our candidates did receive a counteroffer from her current employer and opted to stay in her position. So we have two candidates tonight. Jill Cahill, who you'll hear from in a moment, who's currently the Chief Administrative Officer in Gloucester. And later in the evening, you'll hear from Sean Fitzgerald, formerly the Town Administrator of Swampscott. Once we received, the screening committee made those decisions as to who was going to be the finalists. We moved forward with what is considered our next step. Although we had done preliminary backgrounds on the candidates prior to getting to the screening committee so that we could speak intelligently with the committee on their backgrounds and their experience. And obviously, being in the business that we're in, we know many of those candidates, so we could speak quite authoritatively on what we did know about them in order to help the committee make their decisions. But once the three were chosen, we conducted background reviews, which included employment verification, criminal history systems board clearance, and we spoke to a number of references and other people that references referred us to in order to evaluate these candidates and determine whether there were any red flags that should be brought forward. We issued a report to this board that was submitted last week, which provided the board members with copies of the resumes, the cover letters, as well as a summary of the comments that we received in order to prepare the board for the interviews that would be taking place tonight. And for those who are here, if you were not aware, there is actually a tape delay of these televised interviews so that no one can be watching one interview in preparation for their own interview. The plan, I think, is for the board following this is to consider next steps. Whatever steps the board takes, if they do, moving forward to choose a candidate, we always recommend that any choice that's made be subject to contract negotiations, any additional background checks as required. But we believe you have two strong candidates worthy of the board's consideration, and we believe that they should be interviewed based upon their being put forward by the Town of Danvers Screening Committee. So that is my summary of where we have been and where we are today.
Thank you. Would you bring in Jill,
Certainly.
please?
Introduce Jill Cahill.
It would be better if we were a round table rather than
I worked with my hand. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Hi, nice to meet you.
Jill, and this is our town clerk.
We met at the bathroom.
Okay, good. Don't disclose those things.
Full disclosure.
Nice to see you again. Nice to see you again, too.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Where's Tess?
Welcome, Jill. So perhaps first you could just tell us why you want to come to Danvers?
Sure.
What appeals to you about this job?
All right. Can you hear me? Is that working?
It's
Okay,
working,
great.
yep.
All right. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm thrilled to be here and to meet all of you and all of you.
People are interested.
So it was actually the mayor who brought this position to my attention. We obviously in Gloucester work closely with Danvers through the North Shore Chamber and opportunities like that. And so I took a look at it. And for me, as I move through my career, the next step after a chief administrative officer in that situation with the mayor, it's based on they're elected every 2 years. And I was really looking for an opportunity to move to another community on the North Shore, one that has a more diverse economic base, some new challenges that would come with it. And so this position opened up, and I thought this was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime. I mean, you've had 2 town managers in something like 40 years, so when these opportunities arise, you go for it. Municipal government, my interest has always lied with state and local governments. more so. I've never really been interested in going to the federal levels, and I think that's because municipal government's where the rubber hits the road, right? We're the ones who make sure the trash gets taken out. We're the ones that make sure you can flush your toilets. We're the ones that make sure your kids have a great day at school. And that's where my passion lies. I really want to bring that to the community. And what I've observed so far and the research I've done, I'm really impressed, and I'd love to be a part of the team.
Thank you. Communication and collaboration between departments, as well as boards and committees, are very crucial to the success of Danvers. How would you work to not only ensure but also enhance communication, collaboration, and building consensus?
Thank you. Yeah, I consider this one of my strong suits, and I think if you spoke to my references or you spoke to my team, they would agree very much. I'd say I lead first with honesty and transparency in my communication, so that therefore people know they can approach me and we can have an open and honest conversation that I'm going to follow through with what we talk about. And I think that is step number one in getting your team on board to working with you. We are working a lot right now. It's very difficult in municipal government because of the silos that departments are in naturally. A lot of it is because of what our authority is based under law. Board of Health has authority for here. DPW has authority over here, So by default, we're siloed. And so we do a lot of work trying to build communication across departments. It comes a lot of face-to-face and getting to know each other and building those relationships. And I'm also taking a turn, and I'd love to see how you guys are using it here. I know you're using OpenGov, but so communication and building collaboration among departments, using technology where we can to build that, right? When you already have the personal relationship and you have the trust and you know you can talk to someone and they're going to follow through, but then the day goes on and it's busy and everyone's got things going on. We have technology opportunities that can help push those things to the next step. So we're working right now, and again, I know you're using the same system, and I don't know it to what ability, but we're looking into the different ways that OpenGov can also help the transparency and the communication between not only the departments, but the departments and the boards and the departments and the applicants when it comes to permitting. I think any type of work, project management software that helps remind you, hey, your next step in this, you're the next step in this, can you get it going? And then that way, it keeps the busy work out of it, right? So it keeps moving it through. So there's a whole human piece of building collaboration and communication, which starts with transparency and honesty, but there are tools that we can use, because all of us in municipal government have way too much on our plate to begin with, and so we have to focus on what we can do to make it more efficient.
Thank you. Mike, do you have any questions for Jill?
I do have questions.
You can take a turn.
All right. Are we going to ask all of ours at once or move around?
No, we'll move around.
Okay, so just a few?
Yep.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I had two, so you get two.
Okay, all right, thank you. Hi, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Sorry you're on the hot seat. That's just the way it worked.
It's just the way it works. That's okay. It's not the first time.
All right, here's one for you. Can you describe your management style as to how you deal with your department heads?
Sure, and similar answer to what we just spoke about. I think my department heads would tell you, first and foremost, I'm transparent and honest. I follow through with what I say. I say it the way it needs to be said in the first place, so we don't have to keep repeating things. But I'm also very much bring kindness and personality into those relationships as well, because developing those relationships with your managers so that you can trust each other is key. You can't do any of the work we do without the team around you. There's a second part of that question.
There is. I don't think I asked.
Oh, I thought you did. And I think, and again, it's spending time with each one of them. So from the start, I'd really have to spend some time getting to know them, getting to know their work style, getting to know their challenges in their departments, and where they see opportunities. Again, most of these people have been here certainly a lot longer than I would be if I stepped into the seat, and they bring a lot of knowledge that's really important for me to learn. So a lot of active listening at the beginning, and really letting them get to know me. I'm not a micromanager. I believe in my staff. I hold them accountable for their goals, and I support them when they need support. Follow through with what I have to say.
Thank you. And how do you motivate your managers and then have them motivate their people?
This is the challenging one in municipal government too. Gloucester is a union shop. We don't, as you guys know, we don't get to give bonuses and things that they do in the private sector. So you got to celebrate the wins when we get them. You got to make sure they're valued for the work that they do and they understand it. It can be really challenging to work in the public environment. And so we've got to stick together and build as a team, celebrate their wins when they get them, let them know. It's really important to me that everyone on the team knows that we're all part of a unit that works together. From the minute I walk in the door, I treat the custodian the same way I treat the DPW, the same way I treat the chair of the Board of Selectmen. We're a team, and we have to all work together to get it done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dee?
Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you.
You said in your cover letter, and I'll quote you here,
Oh, boy.
actively engaged in the issues facing the city of Gloucester and the greater North Shore, and have worked throughout my career to build connection with state and federal officials, as well as community partners. I'm confident that I'm prepared to lead the town of Denver through the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. What do you see in Denver as one of the biggest challenges and or opportunity that you would like to, that you think your experience will help you tackle, and how will that experience and your style help you in that process?
Sure. So I think the North Shore in general is all of us, and the Commonwealth in general, right, are facing challenges related to housing, changing populations, changing economic sorry about that, economies. So I would say the two in economic development and the housing go hand in hand. And so I know in Danvers, one of the exciting things about Danvers to me is the commercial tax base. But I also know that while you have some exciting industrial parks and medical and biotechnology and all those great things, you also have a lot of retail in your commercial economy, and that's changing quickly. I think the statistics are something crazy, like 90% of retail stores are going to start closing at least 1 or 2 or 3 or more of their forward-facing shops. So I think exploring how to diversify those kind of economic or the retail areas of your community would be an important part. And housing goes hand in hand with economic development. We need to support diverse types of housing because we need workforce on the North Shore. I was part of a Blue Economy project that really studied how the workforce moves around the North Shore, and we have an incredible talent pool here if people can live here, right? And that's the challenge. And if people can live here, then companies will move here, and then we have incredible amount of jobs here, betters our education system. So they all go hand in hand. But if at the heart of it, if people don't have places to live, it's hard to attract the businesses that follow them as well. So, and I guess the last one I would say is downtowns. Downtowns are everything. They're the heart of communities. And they're struggling right now. It goes back to that retail discussion. So taking a look, I don't know your downtown well yet, but I'd love to get to know it. I know it's part of a lot of your discussions. I've read a lot of the planning efforts that you've put around them. But for me, I'm an experience-based person, so I'd really want to get down there, meet people, get to know what's going on, how the shops are going, how the restaurants are doing. Go visit it with some of you, see how the kind of human experience is down there, to see what I could bring from my experience in Gloucester to Danvers.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I moved to Danvers because of the schools, because I wanted my kids to go to school here. So the school department is a big part of our town, like many cities in town. what was your relationship with the school department, or what is your relationship with the school department in your current position?
Sure. So the mayor that I work for, that I work with, he is a member of the school committee, not the chair, but a member of the school committee. So, and he's a former chair of the school committee. So, in the day-to-day school committee policy work related to the school system, that's really he leads that. But I obviously support him through all of that. But I also I work very closely with the superintendent on personnel issues that cross the two departments. I work closely with the superintendent on supporting the building. So the DPW has care and custody of our school buildings. So understanding that relationship between the facilities and the needs of the facilities and how that meets educational goals is a big part of the work that I do with the schools. I'm responsible for the budget, so when it comes to budget time, then that's where I have to make the tough decisions, and they are incredibly tough decisions. Again, as we were just talking about with economic development, companies want to move into communities that are thriving with strong schools, and it's an incredible puzzle, right, to try to understand and put those pieces together of funding how much of your town budget, in your case town budget, goes to the schools while still supporting the other departments, because all of the infrastructure, the roads and the sidewalks and getting the kids to school safely and all of that is part of the equation. So I would say I probably have the toughest part of the school discussion. Everybody, I was at a city council meeting last night. If I could give the school more money, we all would, every single time. But everything is a give and take. So I have to unfortunately make some of the very difficult decisions around our schools, but I agree with you that they're the heart of the community. They're incredibly important.
Okay. Thank you.
Maureen?
Well, Dee, thank you for asking those couple of questions that I had, so that was good. Terrific, thank you for coming before us again. Our budget, we talk...
Maureen, could you say?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, thank you. We talk about our budget. How are we going to ensure fiscal responsibility while still keeping our community needs?
So I'm glad I actually did some additional research today, because I saw how far along where you are in your budget process now. From the research I've done so far, it looks like you guys have successfully managed a conservative budget, and I'm really impressed when you see the free cash numbers that you're bringing in and how stable your budget has been over so many years. I think for me, it would take me a little bit of time to do some digging and learn more about kind of what your debt and where you are with all of that, your debt ratios and debt capacity, and what you've been investing your free cash in the past. But I know some of the tools that have worked for us, and I would, like I said, would want to learn more about what you've been doing before I assume you need any change, because you guys are doing a great job. But I think stabilization funds are key. We recently just added a stabilization fund related to roads, because as we know, Chapter 90 is never going to pave the roads that we need paved. So that's one of our first steps. We have building stabilization, capital stabilization, general stabilization. We added roads recently, and we actually, in this last budget, because of some challenging times around school funding, we added a special education stabilization fund too. So I think keeping that ratio between stabilization and debt fair is probably the most important part. But as I said, you guys, your financial situation looks pretty good. And then continuing economic growth, right? So Proposition 2.5 limits us all. The only other way to move that needle is economic growth.
Great, thank you. Here's the question. What would be your first priorities for the first 6 months?
So this one I've been thinking about a lot. again, I try not to assume, because I'm not here now, I try not to assume that I know what the priorities of this community are. It's a learning curve for me, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know that. So I'd really focus on the management side of it, the internal management side of it. So communications and collaboration would be number one. Community engagement, getting to know the community, getting out in the community. Number two would be building the team. Like I said, I like to get to know people. I'm really a people person, so I like to get to know people fast, build my reputation with people, make sure I understand what the needs are and the challenges are amongst the team. And the third one would be communication and transparency with the public. I think there's the public trust in government right now is tough, and it makes it hard on the team, and it makes it hard on the public. So I think that has to be one of the top goals from the beginning, finding ways that we communicate with the public, build trust in the public, engage with them. And so that would be my first 6 months. And in that time, and doing those, learn the vision that the community has built. You know, I've come from I was a community development director, so a lot of planning. So you can read all the plans, but they summarize the feelings, but you got to humanize it to understand what the community really wants and needs. So while going for those three things, hopefully all the details will come out.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Dan. How do you like to be addressed? Jill?
Sure.
Well, then, it's only fair that I be David. You don't even have to talk.
Okay.
I do wish that we were around a table rather than having you sitting out there, and I'm sorry about that. So, and I'd like to ask you, Jill, you are aware of the existing residency policy?
I am, yes.
Yeah, and that if you're chosen, you'd be expected to live in Danvers?
I would, yes. I knew it was made clear from the very first phone call. It's a beautiful community. You know, I'm lucky that I'm in a position that I'd be able to move. A lot of people wouldn't be, so I consider myself quite lucky. And my family, my parents and my sister are still in Gloucester, so I still will stay connected to my friends there, and would. Thank you.
Go there 3 or 4 times a week. I take my dog on the boulevard. What a place.
It is a beautiful place, but this would be an opportunity to embrace a new beautiful community. So I'm okay. I'm ready for it, and I accept it. Yes.
Thank you. DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion. In Danvers, we had a particular officer coordinating with our Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, and that person left, I think, 6 months ago. In Gloucester, do you have a DEI person currently on staff?
We do not.
Did you have one?
We have not.
How do you feel about the concept and need?
This is a tricky question, of course, but especially now, exactly. So I'll say this: we do have a Human Rights Commission. I think that hiring and recruitment and retaining employees is challenging the municipal environment, period. Whatever we can do to attract staff and make people feel valued at work is incredibly important. We engage our Human Rights Commission often. They're an advisory commission to the mayor. Because all the issues that our communities are all facing similar issues when it comes to welcoming new members of our community. So, but when it comes to the officer particular, I don't know, most of the models are that they work with HR. So I really think to myself, we work in general in our community to make sure that our workplace is welcoming and strengthens people's ability to do their job.
From my experience in Danvers, our concern has not only been the workplace, but people in the community, whether they be of color, sexual orientation issues, Asian issues, which would, I guess, come under any particular category of non-white. We have cared very much about trying to make Danvers a welcoming place. And from my own experience, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Any thoughts on that, of how to make it easy, or whether you would have an interest in trying to make it easier for lesbian parents to be comfortable in Danvers?
I think everybody wants to live in a place where people feel safe and comfortable where they live. And I think that is an important role of government, is to make sure people know that they feel safe, that they're, people who move to Danvers today, you said that you moved here for the schools. You're just as much as part of the community if you moved here today because you had a job opportunity, you have this, and you want to attend the schools, or as if you've lived here for generations and generations. And I think we set the example as leaders in our communities, and I think it's really important that people feel welcome.
In Danvers, we have several pockets of,
David, speak into the microphone, please.
excuse me, Dave. We have several pockets of fundamentalists, of the kind of people that believe that only white people should be in this country and should speak English. I don't know how to deal with that, except we have a superb Human Rights and Inclusion Commission, but I think it's important that our chief executive officer be also plugged into that concept and hopefully seeing it as a very, very dramatic and important need. We could, if I could move on to a couple of things. The school budget is so much within the prerogative of the school committee. How do you finesse that, being responsible for the overall amount of money collected, to deal with the school committee who wants more? And have you been dealing with that in Gloucester?
Yes. Yeah, no, our school committee always wants more. And like I said, it's probably one of the most challenging things, because you never want to be, you don't want to be the person on the front page that says, they didn't give the school committee the money they wanted. So the school committee in Gloucester they develop their budget. The mayor is one vote on the school committee. But we work very hard ahead of the game, closely with myself and the CFO of the schools and superintendent, to try to agree on a number as closely as we can with what we at the city side can live with and what will meet the needs of the schools. And we've been successful at it I've been in this role for 3 years. The first year we gave the largest increase to the schools that the community had seen in probably the last 20 years. Very proud of that. My sister's a public school teacher. My kids I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, so was thrilled to be able to be a part of that. The second year, another really nice increase, higher than all the other departments. Third year, same thing. Really nice, still the highest of all of our departments, but it led to cuts for them because of the increases in special education costs primarily. I think it was a combination of the COVID money running out and the planning for how to retain the staff that came on board through COVID, and special education going up much higher than they expected. So unfortunately, that was the first instance where the school committee passed a budget that was higher than the city number that we'd given them. It definitely put us on the front page and put us in front of city council, but it was our job to talk to city council to explain to them all the other commitments we had on the other side of the budget. So this year, I feel pretty confident we're at a number. We obviously had a very public teacher strike, so we have a contract that we have to fulfill. We're negotiating with all of our other unions, and so I think we're there with our number of the school committee. I hope so, but we are in a position where our schools will get an increase in their budget somewhere between 3% and 5%, and the rest of the city operating budget will be closer. We're asking for level funding, so you'll just see an increase in the contractual increases in staffing. So it's difficult. There are difficult decisions to make, but there's a lot of mandates in the schools that are really important. They're there for a reason. I'd like to see a lot of advocacy on the state side.
Yeah, I would move in, if I could, for a moment. We had a lot of concern in the last year and a half of the necessary funding under state mandate to fund, for example, the transportation of a special needs student from here to Concord, New Hampshire on a daily basis, and our hope that we could enhance our school budget so as to hire the specialists to provide that care for an educational need for the local in need, to cut down the transportation and other costs. Did you have that experience in Gloucester?
Absolutely, yes. That's where, I'd love to learn more about how it's working, because we just took some of those first steps recently by hiring a new special ed director. But the other side of those state mandated costs is that not only are they state mandated, but they're unpredictable, and that's like the worst thing that we can have in municipal budgeting. And even worse at a town, because you guys get like one bite at the apple, right? I mean, we have a little bit more flexibility than that in a city. So the unpredictability of the mandates that are on our schools are really difficult. But I also think it's important that we recognize that meeting the educational needs of all of our students in the community are important.
Finally, if I may ask, now Gloucester is within the Essex Aggie.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. How you doing with your Essex Aggie relationship? And I won't tell you about ours, except it really frustrates me.
So it's an incredible resource, right? We have a lot of students that love to go there. It's obviously difficult to send a portion of your budget out the door and know that the per pupil education costs is higher, significantly higher than it is in your local schools.
Right. We have been attempting, as I understand it, it's not just the school committee, it's the town manager historically fighting to contain the budget and pay for other things that are going on. To try to negotiate some kind of a scaled thing so that the distribution of demand for money is fairer between the communities that participate in the, I don't know if you've done that or if you've...
It hasn't been my role, but the other side of that, how we're trying to build things at home, is we are really building our vocational program in Gloucester High School. Right now we have advanced manufacturing, automotive. My son he's in the automotive classrooms, and he loves them. They keep him going throughout the day. And we have electrical. And we're going to add medical assisting. And so we're trying on the other side to build those vocational programs within our schools, attract people who may not get into Essex Tech to want to come to Gloucester and take a look at what we have.
You mean people from outside of Gloucester?
Yeah, if they don't get into Essex Tech, and the vocational track is an incredibly important track to offer in schools. These kids are graduating and moving into high-paying jobs, right out of high school, and I think it adds to the diversity of an educational experience, and so
Thank you very much
that's
for
what we're
being
working
here.
on.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, David.
Thank you, David. Jill, talk a little bit more about your background in land use and community development and how we can balance the benefits of development with the impacts that the growth puts in our neighborhoods.
Sure. So as Community Development Director, the Planning Department was, Planning and Conservation Commission were both under my purview. I'm not a planner by trade, but I learned a lot very fast from our incredible planning director. Going back to the plans that we were talking about before, so we work really hard at engaging the community in our planning activities, and then taking those plans to the next step so that we can really point back to when, and we're working on a comprehensive plan now, right? So that when we look back and a permit comes before us for development, we can say, if it's a mixed use, mixed use project, we can say, look, this housing production plan that we approved and the community was engaged in really said that this was a great opportunity for us, or this planning document was here. But then we also know that when the reality, like you said, of the development starts happening, that's when you really see the effects of it. And so we've been working really hard, and one of the things that I I try to make sure we take into consideration, and we do, is really pay attention to the permitting. Make sure your departments are working together on the permitting and communicating to each other. You want to make sure that your engineering team and your DPW team is looped in as early as possible to know, so that we know whether our water infrastructure and our sewer infrastructure is going to be able to handle the development. So I think that goes back to your original question of that collaboration among departments and boards. We do pre-application meetings, which I'm sure you guys do too, to really make sure that we're taking as close of a look at a project from the beginning. We have incredible members of our planning board and our ZBA. They're active and engaged, as I'm sure yours are, and I would look forward to getting to know them and work with them. And it's a challenge for sure. And again, they have authority that's given to them, mostly through the state, planning boards and Concoms. And the hard part sometimes for people to understand is they do have to stay within that authority. And sometimes the answer isn't what the public wants, but they have to work within the rules that are given to them. So education, communication, and really making sure that people are working together, so that we can get it out to the public about what's happening, and make sure that they understand what the decisions are based on. Because the people sitting, all of you, planning board members, ZBA members, they love their community, so they're there for the right reasons.
Thank you. So you're currently in a city with a mayor who runs every 2 years, city council, but in Danvers, it's a little different setup.
Yeah.
What is your understanding of the relationship between the town manager and this select board?
So I've been trying to observe that and see how that goes. The way the job description reads, right, it says that's chief administrative officer, that the town manager is chief administrative officer, and you guys are the executive. So I see it very similar. That, the mayor is the executive, I'm the chief administrative officer, you guys are the executive branch. At the heart of why I got into government, sometimes I'm a little too literal in this is government structure, and legislative bodies are here and executive bodies are here. So, that's my high level view, but I think the next step is getting to know all of you and how you work with the town manager. I'm assuming each of you has your own style. It's my job to lead and advise and get you the information that you're looking for to make decisions. The town manager makes day-to-day decisions, but under the vision and direction of the select board. So some members, I'm guessing, want to communicate on a daily basis. Some members maybe not. So I would take a little time to get to know the actual relationship. But at the end of the day, you're the electeds. You're the ones who are held accountable every day to the public. So I follow the direction of the select board.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you. We'll go back to a little planning here again. Considering the MBTA mandate and the rapid growth that's taken place right here, right now, some feel in town it should be slowed down. We're losing our town feel, our historic feel. And the fact that they're requiring the cluster housing in these communities and ours, and with specific land use and densities, it seems like they didn't think it all the way through as far as the shortages and services that are about to take place that we're all going to realize. What are your thoughts on that?
You guys are giving me the softballs, huh? So, a couple things on MBTA communities, right? At the end of the day, we've learned that it's the law. It's state law, and that's our job. We're municipalities. We follow state law. We all swear to do that when we take our jobs. So, like it or leave it, that's the law, and we do follow it. Now, does that mean that we like it? No, not necessarily. The impacts are real, and we're feeling it very strongly in Gloucester. I think we went through an incredible process, a year over year of community engagement, planning board, fully support, unanimous vote by the planning board, unanimous vote by city council, and a petition referendum that now has us going to a vote on April 24th. So you guys, from my understanding, have already met your mandate. So I've been living it, very real in Gloucester. Because I think just that, I think that it's there's things that we all need to understand. It goes back to the fact that the planning board and the city council did their work very diligently, and as I believe yours did too, when they permitted a project that would meet it. And if you could permit a project that was in front of you that would meet it, I mean, good for you. Because the process has been challenging for our community. It's really torn our community apart to some extent. But it is state mandate. We do know that housing is a challenge, and housing is going to affect all of us. So we work hard to meet those state laws in a way that is best for our community.
So we all have to agree on that. There's no way around it. But how do we pump up our services? Because, like, for instance, there's a building that's going to open soon this year, and we're going to have a whole bunch of people living in the center of town, and we're not going to have the amount of people, in my opinion, that we're going to need to take care of basic services every day, considering that we could have a lot of nuisance situations with this many people living there. We need to increase these without hammering the taxpayer.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's everybody's goal. I think one of the zoning, because we're talking about land use and zoning, we have been looking at and discussing, and I don't know, again, I haven't seen this in yours yet, but the state does try to give some incentives through different zoning options. 40R is one of them to help relieve some of the impact to schools. I think that and again, putting it out in the front of the development and in development agreements about how impacts to roads and other infrastructure is something to look towards at the beginning of a development, and make sure that the select board, the town, in this case, the town manager, are engaged in those conversations early, and you need that information from your team, your engineers and things like that. So, but there are some tools out there to meet these.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. T?
Thank you. I believe that everything that we do is to help the people, is for the people. A challenge facing all municipal governments now is the recruitment and retention of employees. And you're going to have a few hundred employees working under you. And I also believe that you're only as good as your people, which is your employees.
Absolutely.
And you're as good as your weakest link within the organization. What has been your approach into addressing this problem of shortage of getting, like in Gloucester, of getting good employees in and keeping them and making sure that you have that balance between holding them accountable but having them smile when they come to work?
Sure. This is an area that we've put a lot of effort into in Gloucester, and I think on the recruitment side, we've really had to broaden the pool. We're not necessarily in department head positions. Finding department heads that have municipal experience has been challenging. So we've really decided to look at, does this person bring to the table management experience, a passion for the work, because that's the challenging part of what we do, and a commitment to the community. And when they're in place, we've had success. Three of our most recent hires, none of them had municipal background. That's something we can all work together to teach them. We have some veteran department heads who've been there for 20 plus years. We can teach them those skills. So we're finding incredible success looking outside the normal sphere of people that you would look for. There's a lot of people, a lot of really high-level managers out there who are done with the private sector and really want to get back to their community. So it's a great opportunity, and I'm guessing there's a lot of them living here in Danvers. And then on the recruitment piece, being consistent and holding people accountable is absolutely key, and it's difficult. It's much easier to look the other way and say, oh, that person's always, behaved that way. But that's what's bringing down the rest of the team. That's what's bringing down the morale. So consistency, making sure you offer the support that people need. But at the end of the day, you have to address problems head on, and make sure that people are being held accountable, because it's just not fair to the rest of the team. We worked way too hard.
Yeah. And I suppose that broadening the pool doesn't mean lowering the standards. It just means you don't have like a tunnel vision into your process.
The profile of who you're looking for is different. It's been a great success for us.
Okay, perfect. Talk to us a little bit about, speaking still of the employees and the people that you'll be managing. Talk to us about collective bargaining you've been involved in Gloucester, and how do you negotiate the contracts, and how does your style related to the success or the less so successful?
Yeah. So I've been involved in negotiating with all of the unions except for the teachers union.
What, please, Jill?
I've been involved in negotiations with all of the unions except for the teachers. My sister's a public school teacher, so I had to specifically step away from that negotiation. I would say my style and the style that the mayor has supported, and our team. So our negotiating team, typically the CFO, myself, our attorney, and our HR director, and then a department head, so police chief, fire chief, whichever union it is. So he's the vision set by myself and the mayor has been go in there, be open and honest about what our financial situation is, and also how much we value our employees. At the end of the day, you can't offer the services if you don't have the employees, right? So, and we're all here and we all do community service. That's the work that we do. So, we truly go in there, being as fair as we can, not with any presumptions of any hard no's or any definite yeses. We're open and listening. We just actually today, the mayor signed the firefighters contract. We're really happy about that. So we've been very successful with the majority of our unions, and I think what people would take from that, my role in that is I stay calm in those negotiations, and really fair and open to having a discussion. Whatever they put on the table, let's talk about it. And these are people we work with every single day. You have to walk away from that negotiating table and ask them to do whatever it needs to be done next. So it's really important that you maintain the relationship during negotiations. You can't let that break down.
Thank you.
Maureen?
Yep, thank you. Say, all the questions are being answered, but that's good. We talked about fostering a positive working environment with the town staff, and also you talked about, with the residents, how are you going to foster, both relationships?
Sure. The management, the town staff and the management team, I feel like is a little easier because you have an audience that's there for you every day, right? You're going to work, you see them every day, you build that relationship. And again, I'm a people person. I want to get to know you. I want to see what your work style is, and really build trust. I think the most important thing is that that team needs to trust me, and know that I'm going to follow through with what I say I'm going to do. Building that relationship with the community is always harder because it's 29,000 people or 22,000 people. It's much harder to get out and meet people where they're at. So I would, as much as possible, I would like to be face-to-face with people. Senior centers are a great place to do that, and I find our senior center is probably the happiest place in the world. If you're ever having a bad day, go to the senior center. It'll change real quick. But also all of the community events. I'd probably be going to a lot of meetings at the beginning just to sit and listen, and get to know kind of the players in the room, who's talking, who's not talking. And then the harder part, right, is as things become more difficult and divisive in some cases, as we're talking about, you got to walk into a room with people who may or may not like you when you walk in there, but you got to be ready to do it and listen. And sometimes the role is just listening. Sometimes the role is consensus building. And sometimes the role is having to say no or deliver some news that people really don't like. So that's much easier when you've spent the time building those relationships. So I think for me, it would really be getting out to where the people are and trying to get engaged with parts of the community that might not be participating right now. Because I think that's a big part of the challenge that goes back to some of the other things we were talking about including people and people feeling welcome is, they need to know that they have a right to participate in their government too. And so getting to know people that might not come to town meetings sometimes and things like that. So I'd really want to be out in the community as much as possible, which goes to, I understand why you would want your manager to live here. It's important.
Okay, good, thank you. The other thing, let's see.
Maureen, could you speak
Yeah,
up,
I'm
please?
I'm just looking
He's
at
just
my
mumbling
notes.
right now.
Yeah, I'm just going through my notes, because everybody, Dee seems to be asking a lot too that I'm asking, but that's good, that we're all collaborating here. So that takes care of that. How do you handle, I know, jeez. How do you,
He's got a book.
as you know, this is a hot topic here. One of the major impacts with quality of life here in Danvers is the planned Beverly Airport.
I'm sorry to hear.
The Beverly Airport.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? Is it working?
Beverly Airport.
Beverly Airport. So, how would you go and help the residents near the airport, naturally the other all residents, with the problems they're having, the touch and goes, the air pollution, the fear of the crashes, more traffic? How would you attack this problem and come up with a solution? It's kind of a tough one.
Well, I'm going to just be honest with you. I don't know enough about the problems yet. I need to learn first. This is one, I would say when I was prepping for this and in the last interview, of the two areas that I have that are kind of the newest or something I don't have experience with I don't know. We don't have an airport. I think it's you guys in East Boston, really, right? And so that's something I'd have to get out there. I'd have to meet them. I'd have to work with the neighborhood groups and the people involved and really learn more about it. And the second one, I'll just say it in case it comes out later, is obviously the electric utilities. Again, there's only a few towns that have utilities in them. So those are two that you're not going to find a lot of candidates who do have the experience with. But you got to learn. So it's learning. It's learning about it. I started reading about it. And then getting to know who the players are in the game and working with all of you guys to get the attention that the residents need.
Good, excellent, good. And then maybe just one more. You understood, you probably have heard that we dropped from a AAA rating down to a double.
Learned that at the last interview.
Yeah, what would you do to get that back for us? Or how would you approach that?
And I would need to start by learning more about why that happened, and you explained a little bit to me, but I didn't see it necessarily spelled out in what I read of the FY26 budget today. So again, would need to learn more about it. I know that for us in Gloucester, we were, because of the makeup of our community, we were likely never going to get to that AAA. So I would need to learn more about the makeup of the community, the debt to savings ratio, all of those kind of issues. So it'd take a lot of time with your, I think here you call it Director of Administration and Finance.
Finance director.
Finance director.
Right. So it doesn't appear that you're afraid to tackle that.
No, actually, I think I shared this with you last time. I've had a kind of crash course in municipal finance. As coming in as CAO, we had a veteran I was CAO, he was CFO. He'd been the CFO for us for over 10 years, Beverly for a gazillion years, really seasoned, and we could really count on him, and it was more of an advisor role. He unfortunately passed away a year ago, and so myself and the then assistant CFO had a real fast crash course on the real details of municipal finance and where all the things that affect things like bond rating. So, I'd need to dig in and really see the numbers first, because if I learned one important lesson is you gotta look below the surface to really get to know what's happening on.
Because that's very important to us to get back there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, you want to wrap it up?
Two very quick ones, if I may,
You
Jill.
may.
You don't have to thank me. Hiring and firing of employees. What role does the select board have in the hiring and firing of municipal employees?
Your role, I don't know that answer. I know you can fire the town manager. I did that research.
I'm sorry, Jill, say that again, please.
I didn't do the research to find out your role in day-to-day HR operations, but I do know that you can fire the town manager position.
We're not going to fire you. So. The second thing is, we seem to have a really decent method of soliciting and processing citizen applicants who are willing to be volunteers for various boards and commissions, like the Concom, which is
It's a tough one.
lot of work. How have you gone about that, and how would you propose to go about that and continue the flow of very talented people who exist in a town who aren't always sure of themselves and need to, I don't know. What have you got to say about that?
Sure, absolutely. So, in ComDev director, there were 18 boards and commissions under my purview,
Saw that.
including Concom and Planning Board. Two of the harder ones to recruit for, affordable housing, many. And we're in this process right now. I think we've been very successful. So right now we had to fill a planning board seat, and at a time when we're going through 3A and all the above, it's an incredibly important seat. We did a lot of time we spent a lot of time paying attention to who was getting involved, who was actively participating in our comprehensive plan work and in our the different 3A zoning community engagement activities that we had. And pursued people that way. We obviously also we put it out publicly via social media, via the paper, via all of that to try to get the recruitment to go further. We lean on our current board members and our staff members heavily because it's really important that the chair of the board and the staff who serves with them feel like they can work with this person and get the person is going to be as dedicated as they need to be. As you said, some of these boards are a lot of work, Concom, Planning Board being two of them. So those are the ways I know best, but I'd be open to any of them. I will say the most important, and with the executive being a select board, the volunteers who man those boards and run all of them we could not have city government run without it in the comprehensive planning process that we're in now. When we look at visioning and tackling what's laid out in that comprehensive plan, the boards become even more important. They've got a lot of work to do, as teamed up with all of our managers and our staff. So you need them, and keeping them engaged is important.
Thank you very much, Jill.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have anything that they feel they need to ask a question of before we wrap it up?
I'll ask one more. So Danvers is a historic town, and we in Danvers take our history very seriously. What is your feeling on the historical district, and what work have you done in the protection of open space and historical assets, if any?
Sure. So Gloucester just celebrated our 400th anniversary, so also coming from a very proud historic town. Historic District Commission is probably one of our hardest boards to fill, and I think people really don't realize what an incredibly important role they play. It's a permitting body. Really, that sometimes in some of our processes, they're the only gatekeepers, right? So making sure you're recruiting for that board and succession planning for that board is incredibly important. I've done a lot of work with our Concom and our planning director and our open space committee on preservation of open space. We have a lot of it in Gloucester and proud of that. We work really closely with the private not-for-profits in our community. The trustees, Essex County Greenbelt, team up with them as often as we can on either both pursuing grant funding to purchase open space that might be available, and then also work with them on putting conservation restrictions on them. So an area I'm really proud of and is really important to me as well. And I look forward to getting to know those areas of Danvers.
Thank you. I'm glad you have experience in that because we want the development, but we also want to keep our small town feel.
It's an incredible balance. It's not easy, and it goes back to kind of the challenges of being in municipal government right now. You're trying to balance things that are naturally opposing, and you're doing it in the public eye. It's not easy, but it keeps you busy every day, never bored.
All set, Maureen?
I'm all set.
Mike,
Quick, easy one.
quick, please.
I don't believe you.
This one's really easy. You make an error, whatever the level is, what's the first thing you do?
You own it. You own it. And you, depending on the level of the error, because at this level they can be real. You make sure you know the outcome of what's the outfall of it and how you're going to manage that. And you go to the people you're held accountable to, and you own it, and you bring forward the plan of how to turn it around.
Thank you.
Jill, thank you very much for coming.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for answering the questions.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
And we have 5 minutes.
Go ahead. I won't start till you come back. We don't have the other candidate yet. Welcome for coming. We appreciate it. So there we go. He turned it on.
And
That's
the
what
clerk
it
takes
was.
care of it, yeah.
Hey, I saw him scratching his head. All right, thank you. Sean, tell us why you're here, why you want this job.
Well, why am I here? I'm here because my folks moved the family when I was 5 to about 10 miles away. And this community has always felt like home to me. I grew up in what is historically known as Old Salem Village as well, otherwise known as South Danvers or South Peabody. You know, every Monday night, I'm in Danvers to get buy 2 pizzas, get 1 free at the best pizza place on the North Shore. I don't know if anybody knows where that is.
I think it's the oldest.
Yeah, I didn't want to, you know, put a shameless plug in there, but they only sell one size because it's the best pizza on the North Shore. So why do I want to be here? Because you have an extraordinary town. It's one of the most historic in our nation, and it is one of the most wonderful communities. I have friends and family that have moved here, that have lived here their whole lives. I've watched the work that you have all done, not only to improve the finances, but to build a greater community. That work is impressive. It resonates with me on many different levels. I also believe that my experience as a public servant and public official over the last 30 years has prepared me in a very unique way to help you with some of your challenges.
Sean, communication and collaboration between departments as well as with boards and committees is crucial to the success of Danvers. How would you work to not only ensure, but also enhance communication, collaboration, and building consensus?
Sure. Ooh. So I've been doing that for a few decades, and I think there are a lot of changes that are happening in our society that requires us to really constantly find ways to get to people that sometimes find it hard to engage as productively. I think the pandemic helped us with a few technologies, with Zoom or online meetings, but getting collaboration amongst boards is really important. One of the things that I've been able to do in all the communities that I've worked with is coordinate a land use board summit or meetings among boards that deal with land use so that there can be some synergies around the thoughts of how economic development, how school planning, how capital needs and town priorities are coordinated among the land use boards, all the environmental protection, historical preservation. Sometimes those are siloed, and when they can be cross-populated among the boards, you can get a stronger sense of consensus. I do think communication is really important. I think updates frequently are important. Even just bullets about the activities that are happening. The last thing that we really want is any board member to be surprised about developments or projects that might be moving forward that need input. Making sure that they get together annually, at least for some summit meeting, though, is really important. I know that Danvers is working on plans. You have a great strategic plan. You don't have a master plan. Typically, that master plan is the glue that ties all of your various boards and committees together. That adage, you know, plan the work and then work the plan. You know, there are goals and there are expectations in a master plan that can really help a community achieve that broader potential across a decade of time. And that's important to kind of connect individuals that sometimes, you know, serve for a few years, but, you know, you lose that continuity if you don't have that shared sense of connection.
Thank you. Mike?
Hi, thank you for being here. Can you describe your management style among your department heads?
Sure, I'd like to say I'm fun. No, my management style is collaborative. I try to help coach and support my team, but I also look to them to help me as well. We're all colleagues in public life. These jobs are harder and harder, and it's important for us to really be able to turn to each other and help encourage each other to be successful. I've offered Toastmaster courses, Lunch and Learns. I'm a certified Toastmaster. I became certified in public speaking when I was in my 20s, and I've learned that that skill can be really helpful in developing skills and abilities with certain members of my team. I've also been able to have training sessions with Microsoft Excel and Word to try to help develop skills, and I take it as a point of pride to develop staff. I hired an intern in Swampscott who then became an assistant town accountant and a town accountant and then a town treasurer, and advanced him through his master's. I see professional development as one of my greatest joys in public life. We need individuals to really see public service as a powerful way to contribute and help our communities.
How do you motivate your department managers and then have them motivate their people?
A lot of affirmation for the things that they do really well. I really encourage them to look around and try to see where the best practices are. I think going to the MMA annual meeting or being involved in associations, there are many communities that are leading in certain areas, and I think if we're on the forward-leaning edge and we can see where things are working in other communities and we can implement those things, we can define some of the excellence in public service. I've certainly been thrilled with the teams that we've been able to pull together. Frankly, I worked with Wayne and I've worked with Steve, and I know their greatest legacies to Danvers are not the buildings. It's the people that they've been able to bring to the table and the support that these individuals bring to government every day.
Thank you.
Dee?
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
You said in your cover letter, and I'll quote you here, I have great deal of familiarity with a broad range of municipal challenges facing communities, especially Danvers. My management style strongly emphasizes teamwork and the principles of measuring outcomes. And you spoke of challenges a little bit there. What do you see as one of our biggest challenges in Danvers that we face from your research? And what will your approach be, and how does your style help you reach that goal?
Sure. Thank you. I think the biggest challenge that Danvers faces is really dialing in on your municipal finances and really getting a sense of how you can really get to the fundamentals. I've pulled the FY26 budget. I've gone through it. I'm a municipal wonk, so I do sit around and drink gallons of milk and go through line by line, and it's the details that make the difference. The little things make the difference. It's the hardest work. This is a good budget, and I want to recognize the department heads and the individuals that have put this together, but certainly you're a little over $100,000 away from a levy capacity, and it's got to be a little disconcerting to some folks. And again, I get the demands for services, but the community is diverse, and you've got a real challenge in terms of meeting all those needs. So you've got to really look at not just supporting these core services, but growing the pie and really defining, the broader economic development that you really have a great opportunity to define. You've got Route 1, you've got 128, you've got Endicott Street, you have lots of places that really can help support balancing the financial responsibilities, but there's a little work there, and I think that lines up with my background. In Swampscott, they had a similar situation when I got there. They had, a couple $100,000 in reserve levy capacity. After 6 years, we built that up to over $6 million. We built stabilizations up from $2 million to $10 million, and it was hard work. We had to go through years of really tightening up budgets. We had financial summits. Mayor Driscoll, now Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, hosted us in Salem. We went out of town, someplace neutral, and we had financial summits, and we brought the financial boards together, and we looked at how we compared to peer communities. We looked at every single contract, and we got a sense of where we were high, where we were low. We recognized, our senior budget at $122,000 was among the lowest in any peer community that we had. We doubled that over a couple of years. We hired a full-time director. We tightened up a few other budgets, and we started to really focus in on the financial fundamentals.
Perfect. Thank you. I and most people move to Danvers because of the schools, among other things. And the school department is is a big part of our town budget and our town. What was your relationship with your school department in your previous position?
Sure. I've had some really wonderful relationships with my prior superintendents. I really see them as department heads. We're one town. In Plastow, I worked with our regional school district very successfully on a number of initiatives. I always invited him to department head meetings, and we collaborated on capital needs. We went over budgets very carefully. In Swampscott, first thing I did was take a statement of interest that I drafted for the Higgins Middle School in Peabody and gave it to the superintendent, and we worked on a revised statement of interest for Swampscott's elementary school. They had, prior to my arrival, they had resoundingly voted down a proposal to advance a middle or elementary school for Swampscott. And after 3 years, we overwhelmingly received approval to build a $101 million consolidated elementary school. All of that required, really close budgeting and coordination with the superintendent and our financial teams. And it's been one of my life's passions as well. I've served on Peabody School Building Committee for 10 years. I've worked on a number of boards supporting education. I was on Marion Court Board of Trustees. It's a passion of mine to see our schools really meet an adequacy of education for every child.
Thank you.
Maureen?
Yep. Hi, Sean. Thank you. Our budget. How are you going to ensure fiscal responsibility while still keeping our community needs?
I'm going to work closely with our department heads and really challenge, everyone to really find the best ways to meet the needs. There are a lot of grants, a lot of public-private partnerships, a lot of regionalization opportunities. And so before we go and support asking for additional appropriations, it's important to really look at any opportunity to try to find efficiencies. I do believe in a lot of no-cost, low-cost community events and really building community. There are a lot of ways to help define a community through community programs that really bring the public out and give the public a sense of support, neighborhood coordination. I think the rec is often overlooked, but it's a really important budget because it brings so many different recreational programs to different generations, and those are ways that I've really tried to strategize and really bring communities together.
Okay, thank you. And another tough question. What would be your first priorities for the first 6 months?
First 6 months, I think, would be a lot of listening. It's important to get out and meet with community stakeholders. There are a lot of different groups, faith-based, civic-based, nonprofits that really need the town to be supportive. I would like to, spend some time listening to folks and really getting a sense of where the needs are, where the opportunities are to collaborate and help support some of the opportunities for collaboration and greater enhancements. Certainly learning a little bit about the priorities for every department, getting a sense of how to set some goals for the board. My biggest responsibility will be helping the board really get into some of the priorities for environmental sustainability or economic development and community building that you've already set out to try to accomplish.
Great.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Dan. May I call you Sean?
You bet, yeah.
Sean, welcome. I'm especially concerned with DEI, with welcome, with inclusion, and have noticed some of your very excellent records in that regard. But I'm an almost 83-year-old gay man who was closeted for 50 years in this town. And statistically, it's expected that almost 10% of the population is, I don't know all the words, non-binary or whatever, non-white heterosexual. That includes lesbians, gay, bisexual, and I know so many lesbian people in this town who are terrified of walking out on the sidewalk holding hands. There are 3 rainbow flags in the town of Danvers, one on the front of my house across from the town hall. There are hundreds in Salem, and there are hundreds in Beverly. We had a DEI officer up till I think maybe 6 months ago who worked very hard with our Human Rights and Inclusion Commission. I just would like your sense on DEI, on efforts to include. We have, unfortunately, a terrifying group of white supremacists in Danvers, too. And they can't hurt me now. I'm too old. But there's lots of young people that can be hurt. How are your feelings about DEI and the human rights and inclusion opportunities and chores that need to be done to make Danvers safer and more welcoming for all people?
David, thank you for being courageous enough to address this issue. Unfortunately, today, it's so hard. It's even harder today than it was 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
How do I feel? I'm a 4th-generation Irish immigrant, descendant from people that came over here escaping probably certain death, and they came over to a country where they had signs all around Greater Boston that the Irish need not apply because we were dehumanized and we were treated as second-class humans. I played college football and hockey. I'm a kid that has spent a lot of time around a lot of bigotry and a lot of hatred. And I see it as ignorance. I see it as an opportunity for us to try to be more engaging. The work around, I support diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. I support that down to my toes. I believe we need to see infinite value, infinite dignity in every person that we meet. It's hard. I think we hate more today than we did 5 years ago. There's more vitriol out there, and I think we have to combat that with more kindness and more careful conversations. I think, I have a 16-year-old and 2 12-year-olds, and I have to have a lot of conversations with them about why it's important to be kind and why it's important to be aware of the bigotry and the language that is out there. And it's hard because, there's a national dialogue that's going on right now that says it's not important. When I think of the number of people that do not get considered for certain positions because of systems that have somehow just failed to include them, it bothers me. And I've worked to try to address that. I've worked with wonderful colleagues and individuals that have helped support some of those changes. I like to think of myself as an advocate, and I'm certainly proud of the work that I've been able to accomplish. I want everybody in Danvers, frankly, everybody in this country to feel safe. I think of Matt Shepard, a young gay man who was tied to a fence and left for dead after being beaten. And that image of that type of horrendous crime will always stick with me.
I went to the very place where he died. I want it to be clear, I do think there are a lot of good people in Danvers, work for our police and fire department and town. Those things should never happen, but they will happen if we don't continue to talk You
about it.
personally know any transgender people?
I hired one in Swampscott to, be part of one of our town events. And yes, I do know transgendered people. And if I hired them in another state, I could have been arrested. And I did it because we live in a free society, in a free country, and everybody should get infinite dignity and infinite value, and we should not treat people inhumanely.
Sean, in the communities where you've worked, have you been part of the Essex Aggie grouping?
Yes.
How'd you get along with the superintendent on budget issues?
I got along with the superintendent very well. I was on the committee with Wayne Marquis that helped regionalize Essex Tech.
Costs us a lot,
I do know that. And I talked to your former town manager about that because it cost Swampscott a lot as well. And we talked about really spending more time going through that budget as a group of managers and really thinking about, we go through our municipal budgets with fine-tooth combs, and look, I think Essex Tech is a wonderful opportunity. When I was a kid going to the Higgins Middle School, we had Peabody's Voc, we shared the middle school with the Voc, and the running threat was if we didn't succeed academically, we'd have to go to Peabody's Voc, and now the Voc is a place where you really have to compete to go to, and it's a wonderful school, and we've changed the stigma associated with the vocational education, but it's expensive. As the host community, certainly when I was in Plastow, we were the host community for the Timberland Regional School District, and I worked with the superintendent to really make sure that we ticked and tied the number of police calls that we had, the number of fire calls we had, the number of inspectional responsibilities, and the number of health responsibilities that we had. It was a burdensome financial responsibility, and it wasn't that we didn't want to see a regional collaboration because I believe in regional services. It's just, the host community does pay a tremendous burden.
And I will just interrupt you to just also mention that we are the host community for non-tax-paying Essex Aggie and North Shore Community College and and St. John's Prep, where I went. And I've always been concerned with my taxpayers in Danvers, including me, paying the roads and the shoveling and the snow and everything else for these non-tax-paying institutions. And I understand we're up against Harvard and BU and Boston College and everybody else that would mutilate us with any attempt to a legislative cure of that. But it seems to me it is dramatically, consistently, totally unfair that my taxpayers pay for all the freeload for the buildings that are exempted in Massachusetts from paying taxes to us. How do you feel about that, if at all?
I'm as frustrated about that as you are, David. When I was in Swampscott, I worked with town meeting to seek a legislative exemption under 61B for the Tedesco Golf Course, because the golf course didn't pay taxes, but it was one of the largest land owners in a town of 3 square miles, and it put an undue burden on every other taxpayer in town. And I see a number of these nonprofits. I appreciate the work of the college and certainly a number of these institutions, but there should be a pilot, just similar to what communities have with hospitals and other organizations, to say, hey, you're taking land and their taxpayers and their police, fire, municipal services all have to be paid for proportionally by property owners, and they may be nonprofits, but they certainly have balance sheets, and we should go after those and just look at it.
I'm going to shut you off because I love your answer, but other people may have questions.
Sure.
And I think it's
Thank you,
for
David.
me to shut up. Thank you, Dan.
Sean, talk about your background in land use and community development and how you balance the benefits of development with the impacts that growth can have on our neighborhoods.
So I like to think of development as doing good things and preventing bad things. And so if I had to kind of look at the doing good things, I've helped do things that were relatively inconceivable, like nobody really thought we could put a hotel in Swampscott, but we did. And it's being advanced right now. I had mayors come to Swampscott that had successfully coordinated hotels, and I worked with them to try to pull together the framework of how we could do it. These are complicated economic development projects, and you have to think like a developer. You have to be the best developer that you know. If you're managing a municipality, if you went to my office in any of the jobs that I had, I would have maps of the community with, all the zoning, and I would know where the highest and best use was and where the potential would be for redevelopment. I would know the zoning in terms of what the zoning allowed for by right and what existed. And so seeing that from a lost tax revenue standpoint, you can get a sense of what would your budget be if you could capture the new growth? What would your budget be if you could actually make, a few of these parcels into something more financially supportive? In terms of protecting neighborhoods, recently in Swampscott, I worked with the select board to prevent several adverse 40Bs. We had a proposal to build a number of units close to a really tight neighborhood that certainly would have exacerbated traffic and would have eliminated a piece of open space that was really desperately needed by a town that hadn't spent a lot of time investing in open space over the course of a half a century. And so I've been able to successfully navigate development and really support a balance of doing good things and preventing bad things. But it's a constant level of effort because, you know, economic development opportunities, they pop up every once in a while. And if you're working with the chamber in Plastow, New Hampshire, I, you know, encouraged a business owner from Methuen Construction to relocate a major business to Plastow just by meeting the president of the company, inviting them to Plastow to take a tour and just helping them see that, you know, there's opportunity. And so you've got to be willing to kind of bring people in and build those relationships.
Sean, you came from a town, so you understand town government. How do you align the role of the town manager with that of the select board and some of your experiences?
Just very simply, I work for the select board. My job is to help each of you be as successful as you can be. You set the sail for the town. It's your leadership that helps support the direction of the town. And so I would see that as a very clear helping align the goals of the board with the goals of the municipal workforce. But certainly, you know, I see our responsibility as really hand in glove. And, you know, I've been a town manager, a town administrator, a city administrator. But in the towns, that dynamic is between the select board and the town administrator or town manager is so important. You know, we have to be really tight as a team if we really want to accomplish the greatest good for the community.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you, Dan. Considering the MBTA mandate and the rapid growth that's taking place right here, right now, some feel in town that it should be slowed down. We're losing our small town feel, our historic feel. While it requires us to have this cluster zoning with specific land uses and densities, it certainly appears it hasn't been thought through, as we're going to be realizing a shortage of services with the amount of people that will be moving in. What do you think about that?
Michael, I think you've got a lot of the frustrations that a lot of the towns that have faced some significant development have. I can say, you know, I don't like the top-down approach. I think that is typically unwelcome by a lot of cities and towns, but we do have a housing crisis. I do think it's important for us to kind of lean into a few of these challenges and try to find a way to support best practices. You have a wonderful downtown. It could be better supported if you had a few mixed-use strategies that would help protect the character of the downtown, but also, you know, add more units to help support a market and more economic vitality. There's a lot to housing. It's not an easy conversation with a lot of folks, but Greater Boston's going to see pressure. Anybody that has a child has to understand that we're pricing our children out of this market if we don't think about how we build housing in a smart way. For me, I don't like the one-size-fits-all approach. I feel like that will cause some harm. And I think we have to really be really good about working with developers and really good at working with projects so that we can shape them in a way that I would say best fits the master plan, but we got a strategic plan. So we want to look at what other communities around have projects that really match the vision that our land use boards would want to see for Danvers, whether it's in the downtown or on Route 1 or Endicott. There's all sorts of opportunities for Danvers to build consensus about what the vision for the reuse of a few of these campuses could be. And I'm speaking in a big picture because we got to build consensus around that. And if you want to protect the character of the town, maybe there's a way to do that with getting some people around the table and really getting some landscape architects to kind of get a sense of what that vision, would be if folks could actually have everything that they would want. Now, that never typically pans out, but you can get something closer to what you want if you get it down to paper. In Plastow, we won a grant to bring 15 landscape architects in. It was called the Plan New Hampshire Grant. It was worth $15,000, and they all came to town on a Saturday, similar to your budget summit that you're having on Saturday. But the landscape architects just walked around the downtown village of Plastow with their easels, and they started to draw a vision of what they heard. And we had 50 members of our planning board, conservation commission, select board, and community, and they put a charrette together that showed, this is what folks wanted to see happen, and that got baked into the master plan. I think before it all comes, you should get busy trying to get a sense of what, how to define what the community would like to see. And I think you'll put the town in a better position to try to avoid having something adverse happen.
Exactly. So I'm asking, how do we increase our services rapidly, money-wise?
Yeah. Unfortunately, Massachusetts, you don't have impact. We don't have impact fees. In New Hampshire, if we had a development come in, we could ask for impacts, public safety impact, school impact, education. We don't have that. And so part of it is, working with public safety and getting a sense of, if we had another X percentage of need and calls based on population, what would that mean budgetarily? I think we have to do some analysis on, what is the level of service and what would happen if populations or we had additional developments, what would that bring? That type of planning exercise is helpful, but certainly development is not necessarily a bad thing in the sense that it comes with new growth. And as we discussed a little earlier, your budget is so tight and you're so close to your levy, you need some responsible development to help grow your real estate tax base. You'd like to see it in the commercial, but you can get mixed growth that can help check both boxes, and that can help you pay for your additional services if you have a smart growth plan. And I do think you have an excellent planning and economic development function in town. You've got some good talent in planning. You've had some, I watched the housing production presentation. I've read your housing production report, and there's some opportunity there, but it's not going to be easy, But I do think there's a way to pay for some of that through the new growth that is generated through the projects.
Thank you.
Dee?
Thank you. Can you walk us through the circumstance? I look at your resume, it says that you were in Swampscott from 2017 to December 2024. Can you walk us through the circumstances surrounding your departure from your previous role? And were there any challenges or learnings that shaped your decision to move on?
Sure. I had been in Swampscott for 8 years. I was coming up to the end of my contract. There were some members of the board that had recently been elected, and frankly, we just disagreed about a number of things. I thought it would be best to negotiate a separation, because sometimes you just get to a point where philosophically you just don't see the same vision. My job here is to help cities and towns, it's not to hurt them, and I wanted to do my best to try to, leave in a way that would help support principles that I had and support the town that I had worked for 8 years. That said, look, these are tough jobs. Did I learn some things? Yes. Have I learned some things over the last 20 years of being the person in charge and addressing all sorts of challenges? You bet. These are wonderful jobs. You can do wonderful things. You can make a huge difference in implementing wonderful change, but it's really hard work. The harder, I'd like to think, leveling a town tax rate for a town that had 20 years of increases, that was generally considered to be, Swampscott passed an override for just the budget about 15 years ago. And we did some financial work that was really difficult, and we did it in a way that helped support not only a $100 million elementary school, but a $7 million acquisition of a waterfront property and another couple of $1 million pieces of open space. And it was all because we had leadership and coordination among a lot of really important boards. But it was challenging, and certainly, the select board asked me to do some really complicated things. The board changed, and I think it was time for me to move on.
Okay, thank you. To the extent that you can, in a package, there were 2 MCAT complaints against the town, and while you were in Swampscott, were the manager. Again, to the extent you can you elaborate about the circumstances of those?
Sure. Both have to do with police officers that filed MCAD complaints. One was an individual that it was the first round of non-civil service hirings. There's a redacted response, over 100 pages on the town website. Basically, the town investigated the complaint. The complaint was the individual stated that I asked her a question about her physicality. The question I asked was, what one thing about yourself would you change and why? I write all my questions down just like you. I've been on the other side of the table. I had 12 questions. I asked each of the candidates the same question. The question that was on the piece of paper was, what one thing about yourself would you change and why? I had taken a 40-course class in mindfulness during the pandemic. It was one of the classes. What one thing about yourself would you change? I could probably give you 20 right now, but the candidate heard, what one thing physically would you change? And that question, that complaint got filed almost 6 months after the interview. And frankly, the other complaint, the select board investigated it for 6 months. They had an outside attorney, and they found that I did not violate the discrimination or the harassment policy. And the other complaint was a individual that filed a complaint of reverse discrimination because he was informed, or somebody told him that he wasn't hired because, some reason. I can assure you, that was based on some faulty information. And look, the only thing I can say is leaving civil service was the toughest thing that I've ever had to do. negotiating that. It was also the absolute best thing that I've ever done in public life, and I've supported grants for new elementary schools and new public safety complexes. But it was difficult.
Thank you. Thank you for your candor in those questions. Thank you very much.
Maureen?
Okay. So what do you think are the most pressing issues facing Danvers now, and how would you address them and prioritize them?
Pressing issues. You know, I watched the candidate forum from last year and the year before, and so housing has come up time and time again. I think this sense that you're worried about how things are going to go forward, or there's a group of folks, I think that speaks to, your lack of a master plan. I think it speaks to this sense that people are unsure of where it's going to go and how it's going to go and what threat could show up and what neighborhood's going to be overwhelmed next. And I think, getting a sense of a plan, a master plan, or some economic development plan, I think would help target some growth. I think the budget, we've talked a lot about that. Going through the budget, really scrubbing that budget, getting a sense, during the preliminary round, we talked, you have your free cash is, you have a healthy number there. 3.7 is from the landfill. I did see that. But there's a number of revenues. If you look at your revenues and you look at your prior year and you see what you use for classification and then what you're estimating, there's a variance, some significant, but if you roll it all up and if you looked at your last 10 years of averages, you'll see some structural issues. That's what I do as a financial manager. And so I think getting into your budget and really understanding the structural issues will significantly help long-term, address the challenges. More details in your budget, I think, would be helpful too. One of the things I shared with the screening committee was that we added 130 different lines to the town of Swampscott's budget. I did the same thing in Plastow, and we added more descriptions. So we had a couple of sentences for each line that really defined exactly what the appropriations were going to be used for. That level of detail kind of helps, give everybody a sense that, look, we're spending everything absolutely very carefully, and it puts you in a position when you have to stand up and say, hey, that's it, that's all we have, as you're bumping into, a levy capacity.
Okay. And you know how important the AAA rating is, and I'm sure you recently heard that Danvers dropped down to AA. How would you get that back for us, since that's very important?
I'd start managing the budget in a way that would prove to the rating agencies that we're on top of it. Swampscott went from a AA minus to a AAA just recently, this past January, and last January. I'm sorry. I would put slide decks together for the rating agencies to show them all of the work that we're doing with town financial policies. You've got financial policies, but we had, policies for stabilization, for budget growth. Our financial policy for budget was 2% plus 425,000 in new growth. Those policies, if you follow them, can really help support the budget development that rating agencies look at and say, all right, that they're really getting into the details and they're managing things very, very carefully. That said, the new methodology for the rating agencies, they're weighting OPEB, and they're weighting your other post-employment benefits and your retirement benefits too much, in my opinion, with the Liberty Tree Mall and your commercial properties up and down Route 1 and 128. They should see that as a huge benefit. Not every community has that, and Danvers is in a really great position to make the most out of those properties.
And then you do understand residency is a requirement,
I do. That was a question
and you are willing to
The
move?
Chair asked me during the, yes, and I certainly understand the charter. I've read the charter, and, as I've mentioned earlier, it's a beautiful town and a place that, frankly, I generally consider to be, a place that's, as close to home as you can get.
Great, thank you, Dan.
Okay, David?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, anyone else have a quick mic follow-up?
Yes, please. Since the door was opened, isn't there a third complaint that was filed? If you can talk about that?
Yeah, there was, during the pandemic, we had we laid off an employee, and they filed a complaint that was settled and withdrawn.
And as I asked, my last question would be, if you make an error at any level, how do you approach that?
You own it, and you own it as fast as you can. Nobody is perfect, and I think, sometimes you just have to recognize, if there's a mistake, you recognize it, and you try to do better.
Thank you.
Okay, Dee, did you have a last question?
Yes, I do. We do everything for the people.
That's right.
A challenge facing all municipal governments is the recruitment and the retention of good employees. What has been your approach in addressing this problem and casting like a wider net as you do your recruitment, and having people that work for you come to work with a smile, even though you're going to hold them accountable when you need to? What has been your approach?
I think you just treat them fairly. Like a number of employees, look, accountability is really important. You're elected officials. You're here to hold your community accountable. You represent the people, and they want good government, but they also want a government that's accountable. As a town administrator and town manager, one of the harder responsibilities that I've had is to, hold my colleagues accountable. Doesn't mean that that they're bad people. It's just sometimes they make mistakes, and they have to, own those actions. I really do want my colleagues in public life to enjoy their service. I think motivated, inspired people generally do good work. I think they love helping people. Our job is to help people. It's hard to do that when you're feeling, attacked and depressed. My job is to protect my employees and help them feel like, they have a great opportunity to go out and help make a difference in people's lives. We have, police and fire departments that save people's lives. They're there in the worst moments of their lives, and that can wear down on them, and it can be really difficult. And so we have to try to recognize when they're really being overwhelmed and give them the support that they need. We have staff that work late hours and, are dealing with really complicated, difficult projects. And so we got to make sure, that we check in with them and make sure that they're doing okay, because sometimes they get unfairly criticized for just doing the good work that sometimes is really complicated. My job is to take care of people and make sure that they are motivated, inspired to to do the wonderful work we get to do in public life.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, since David passed, I can steal one of his
I
questions.
don't think so. But I want to see if Maureen has anything first.
Let's see. I did have one more. Plans for strategic planning, and how would you plan on addressing them? You know, what's facing the town right now?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, I think a land use board summit, pulling everybody together, similar to the budget summit that you're having. I hope it's a budget brunch and, work session, but bringing the land use boards around the table and saying, all right, what are the most important things that we want to protect? If it's your wetlands, the buffer, you have a 100-foot buffer, a third of the town's in wetlands, so you have, a lot of work to do to protect those resource areas. Are there ways that the town could really look at acquiring rights to certain areas that would help further enhance and add to your existing resource areas? Those are all big ideas, but you don't have to get the full appropriation right now. Sometimes just getting the right of first refusal is a way to kind of get your toe in the door, and in a future point where if the land's going to sell, you can acquire it. So there's all sorts of strategic ways to take initiative and really work with your key land use boards and help advance some of those responsibilities, but I'll need to get direction from the board on those things, because ultimately this is the board's responsibility, and if the board wants to address those challenges, I'm happy to champion those.
Just one more, Mr. Chairman. With regards to major impact, quality of life in Danvers is the Beverly Airport. How would you help the residents near the airport and the other residents within our town with all the problems that they're having? Touch and goes, air pollution, fear of crashes, more traffic. How would you attack this problem and come up with a solution?
I watched several of the select board meetings where this issue came up. Certainly, getting a sense of that agreement with Beverly, I think would be helpful. I realize it was signed 30 years ago, but that frankly shouldn't matter. I think sitting down and getting a sense of what the mitigation could be, whether it's a fence, we get fences along Route 128, if the noise is problematic, if there is a true fear of encroachment, where neighbors are feeling as though there's a threat to safety, perhaps there are opportunities to think about buffers, but I think it starts with listening to some of the neighbors and folks that have been around this issue for the last few decades, and getting a sense of what we would expect if we lived in that neighborhood, what would be reasonable in terms of mitigation. I've worked with the FAA in Swampscott. We had a change of the flight paths when it actually shifted from my backyard to a little closer to the ocean. The FAA wanted to get it out from urban dense areas to less dense areas, but we wanted it to be shifted out to the water where we didn't have people. But that cost more fuel, and it put more pressure on the airlines. But, we thought it shouldn't be a profit motive. They should do the right thing from a public health standpoint. And certainly I would look to the Board of Health and other groups to help us determine, what would be the most appropriate and most reasonable strategy for helping to protect that neighborhood.
Thank you.
What's up? Dee?
Yes, so there's a lot of collective bargaining that the town manager has to handle. Talk to me about the collective bargaining you have been involved with, and how you have negotiated the contracts and how your style related to the success or maybe not to success of those?
Yeah, I think my style is versatile. And so I think over a while you learn, sometimes if you match the style that's across the table from you, that can be counterproductive. So sometimes you have to bring a different style. But there are times where you have to, think carefully about how negotiations happen, especially when you're in pretty challenging dynamics. If you, I've managed communities through 9 C cuts and great recessions, and I've had to work with collective bargaining groups to avoid layoffs and really prevent bad things from happening. And I'm pleased to say that, we've been able to do that. But I've also had to negotiate some concessionary changes at the direction of the board because of town financial challenges. And I've had to spend a lot of time going over the financials and saying, look, here's the cost of this contract. Here's the budget. Here's the, financial position. And here's what we're trying to achieve. And this is why we need a few changes. I learned long ago, I worked with a number of pretty effective negotiators, that there's typically a give and get with every negotiation. There's something that you give, something that, you can receive, and so you should have a list of items. The best way to develop that is to go look at peer communities. I've pulled as many as 12 different contracts from different peer municipalities to really go through and say, all right, where are we high and where are we low? What would actually make more sense? There are times where I've gone in and I've added more money to certain areas of the contract because I've worked with the chiefs or I've worked with the department heads, and we've seen this is really where the need is, and we're going to take it from some other areas that were put in a couple of decades ago that were just supplemental cash items that no longer have a real purpose in driving the work that the contract could support. I would say, after a couple of decades of negotiating those contracts, I have a pretty good track record of successful agreements, but it's hard work, and it's not unsimilar to negotiating real estate development deals or solid waste contracts. It can be hard, hard negotiations.
Thank you.
Okay, we're all set? Yes, Mike?
You had brought up earlier that, about the,
Mike, would you speak into the mic,
yes, I'm
please?
sorry, Dave. You had brought up earlier about the civil service. Would you be looking to take our police and fire out of civil service?
No, there was a decision that was made by Swampscott Select Board and Swampscott Town Meeting. So that's not a prerogative of a town manager. I see that as a select board prerogative.
Thank you.
Okay. Sean, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Enjoy your long ride home. All right, board members, stay, David.
Not leaving.
Okay, stay with me for a minute. Quick question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to give it a try? Have a great night.
Thank you.
Board members, very simple question. Are you prepared to make a decision tonight?
No.
Maureen?
On the 18th, would we make it?
No, tonight.
Tonight? I could make a decision tonight.
Thank you. D,
I will prefer the 18.
the 18th. David?
No,
What's that?
no, I would not be prepared to make a decision tonight.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
Okay.